Digitalizacija praktično vsega okoli nas nasili v najrazličnejše preobrazbe. In prav zato smo za letošnjo osrednjo temo izbrali digitalno preobrazbo. Postregla bo z izzivi in pozivi, prednostmi in priložnostmi za informacijsko in telekomunikacijsko tehnologijo ter gospodarstvo nasploh. Digitalizacija ostaja trend in bistvo. Kako naj to digitalno potovanje podjetja razume in sooblikuje CIO? Spoznajmo vaše izzive skupaj z gospodom Antonijem Harringtonom, izvršnim partnerjem v družbi Gartner. Please welcome Mr. Harrington.
Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Yes? Okay. So, good morning, and thank you very much to the organizers for inviting us to speak here this morning. So that was an excellent first speech, and I think it sets the scene nicely for what I'm going to talk about. Okay. Okay, so you can hear me? You can hear me okay? All right, okay. Good morning again. My name is Anthony Harrington. I work with Gartner. Gartner is the world's leading independent IT technology and research advisory firm. And I work with our business unit executive programs, and that's a service that we work directly with CIOs of large companies. What I'm going to talk about this morning are the results of some recent surveys that we finished. One we just finished last month, and it's the first time that I've presented these results. Our annual CEO agenda. So what's on the mind of CEOs worldwide and what we believe CIOs should do about that. Then secondly, I'm going to give some very brief results from our annual CIO agenda survey also. Okay. So one thing about my slides is that I have quite a lot of information and numbers on the slides. So what we'll do is we'll make sure that everybody gets a copy of the slides afterwards. Okay, so because I have quite a few slides, so I'll go through them at some pace. Okay, so we just finished last month our CEO survey. We surveyed 396 CEOs around the world, and 40% of those were in Europe. 16% were presidents, chairmen, or other C-level. 65% CEOs. Okay, and I wanted to start by explaining our definition of digital business, but my first presenter has done such a good job, I don't really need to do so. What I would just say is that our definition of digital business is the creation of new business designs by blurring the digital and physical worlds. And our previous speaker gave such good examples. Companies like Uber, perhaps companies like Airbnb. You also mentioned Ryanair, so I'm from Ireland. Yeah, it is interesting to see Ryanair as an example of a disruptive company. So, okay, if we took one key finding from our survey, it's this: that 2016 is a year that calls for what we call digital tenacity. Okay, that the CEO and the CIO, because we believe the CIO is a key partner for the CEO, they need to pick up the pace or stick with the program. Okay, so we know that markets are jittery. When we look at stock indices around the world, when we look at the headlines, there's a general air of unease. There's a general sense that things are bad. Okay? However, when we look at the data from the CEOs, actually they're not that worried overall. And there are a couple of key differences which we believe contribute to this. But the core advice from this slide is stick to the plan or even start to push your digital plans harder. The previous financial crisis we had in 2008 and the current crisis we have now, there's one fundamental difference. When we looked at how companies were using technology prior to the financial crisis in 2008, very often technology was aligned against expense items in companies. Okay, so internal processes, maybe your accounts payable, receivable, your HR systems. When we look at how companies are increasingly using technology today, instead what we see is that more and more technology is against revenue items. All right? So innovation in the customer and product services. And so you don't really have a choice in this sense. we do believe that digitalization will disrupt the different industry verticals that you all work in, and it's not going away. Okay, so we asked CEOs this question: what net impact do you believe these macro business environment factors will have on your businesses in 2016, 2017? And what the core takeaway from this slide is that it's broadly positive. So green is positive, red is negative. It certainly balances out in the worst case. So even though, for example, low oil prices are hurting some industries, they're helping other industries. Even though we have some instability in the Middle East, it hasn't had such an impact so far on profits. Likewise, economic growth rates are broadly positive. When we asked them, those CEOs who believed that economic growth rates would have an impact on their businesses, we asked them to state whether it would be positive or negative. And you can see here the different results from worldwide. For Europe, we had 64% believe that economic growth rates will have a positive impact on business in the period 2016-2017. So the message is it's not all that bad. Even though there's a lot of bad news, it hasn't yet been impacting on businesses. Okay, the second core message from our CEO survey results is this, that there is a return to a focus on people, okay? And in particular, a focus on customers and a focus on employees. And we do have the sense, everybody has the sense that we're at the top of a cycle. We hear a lot about income inequality and uneven distribution of wealth. But we do start to see now companies, large companies in the US that maybe traditionally had minimum wage workers such as Walmart or McDonald's, we do see them start to pay more. It's interesting to reflect that perhaps it's an impact of social media. So when we ask CEOs to identify priorities, these two things came out. That there is going to be a focus on people, as I mentioned, on customers and on employees. So what we would recommend CIOs to do is to look at your portfolio of projects and investments that you currently have planned. So literally look at the list and mark off which ones of those are helping against either to deliver a better customer experience or are maybe digital workplace transition, so making it easier to attract and retain top talent, okay? If it turns out that you do this analysis and you see that a lot of your projects and initiatives are very technical in nature, technical in focus, then maybe that's a sign that you're a little bit out of touch with what your CEO is thinking about. So when we asked them to tell us their organization's top 5 priorities for the next 2 years, these are the results. Now, okay, as IT people, we look and we see that we're now 24% IT related, not quite so high, a little bit lower than when we previously ran that. But what is consistent is the focus on growth, continued focus on growth, and 31% focus on customer, 27 on workforce. Okay, so that's where we get this message from about people. When we look a bit further at these numbers, the CEOs tell us that what they're interested in terms of customer service, customer satisfaction, training and development of staff internally, retention, talent management. And it's interesting, talent management is something that when we look at our CIO survey as well, talent management is now being listed by CIOs worldwide as the #1 challenge they have that is preventing them from being successful at their jobs. Okay, so that's something that CEOs and CIOs are very much agreeing about. Okay, so productivity. Productivity, this is an interesting one. So we looked at the data around CEOs thinking about productivity. And our recommendation is that our CIO members, CIO clients, that we're recommending them to start thinking about what exactly does productivity mean for your industry today, and what will it mean in the next 3-5 years as your industries become redefined and redesigned by digital. So literally to think about what are the metrics, what would be the KPIs, how would you measure productivity, and how would you improve it? And what we're going to say is that it's unclear. The data is unclear on this point. When we asked CEOs, so in this particular question, we did not give them this list of topics and ask them to rate them. No, we gave them a blank form and said, write down your top priorities. And you can see that efficiency and productivity are very low, rated 9%. So we looked at this and tried to figure out, what does this mean? Does it mean that CEOs don't care about productivity anymore? And this is an excerpt from an interview we did with Jeffrey Immelt, who's the CEO of General Electric, late last year. And he's talking about a US context. And he said, why is US GDP growth 2% instead of 4%? Why has productivity around the world slowed so dramatically? I urge everybody to look at yourself in the mirror and ask why. What role have we played to make productivity really take off? And continue the way it should. Clearly, the tools of the 1990s worked, but we need to find the next big driver. Now, when he talks about the tools of the 1990s, I guess he means the big industrialized IT systems that we all specialized in at that time. So things like business process management, things like ERP, maybe things like some supply chain management tools. But the question is, what's next? Because when we look at the returns on these technologies from companies around the world, the returns on these technologies are diminishing. But it is not clear what is going to take the place of those industrialized IT systems that drove productivity in the 90s. When we asked what were their focus on innovation in the previous 2 years and what they're thinking about for the next year to in innovation, it's been innovation around customer and product, okay? And what we're suggesting is let's start to think about how we can use innovation again to drive our productivity. So if you remember, I showed a slide which said that CEOs, when they were unprompted, mentioned that productivity was only 9%. It was in their top 3 priorities. However, we asked this question explicitly. Productivity, how important is it to improve your productivity over the next 2 years? So when we asked the question explicitly, the results were extremely important, 46%, very important, 32%, or somewhat important, 20%. Only 2% said not relevant. So something is wrong in this data, or at least something is unclear. So we tried to figure out what this means. And we think this slide is maybe indicative, because when we asked, okay, so now you're telling us that productivity is really important when we explicitly call it out. So what are you going to do about it? Like, what suggestions, ideas do you have to improve productivity in the next 2 years? And this is the answer that they give us. Now, when we look at this, what we see is that this is all over the place. This is vague. There is nothing conclusive. There is no single wave here. Even this technology at 26%, when we look at those questions, they are quite vague, and there's nothing very directive and clear there. So what this tells us is that people don't really know. All right? They know that it's critical, they know it's important, but there is no single consensus yet on what productivity is going to mean for us in the future. So we urge you, as CIOs, to start thinking about that conversation. Okay, so digital business is now mission critical because profitability and innovation depend on it. So again, our previous speaker did a very good job at driving this home, but we do want to really, really, really put to rest the idea that digital may be optional, or that it may be a fad, or it may be a hype. It isn't going away, and it is becoming increasingly embedded in not just how we are selling things, but what we're selling, the products we're going to sell. This was just a sample example of McDonald's. They're around the world rolling out these booths where you take your order, pay your cash, and just collect your goods at the customer. What's interesting is that they organizationally, this is now a joint initiative been run by the CIO and the CDO, and previously innovation was at the responsibility of franchises in McDonald's, but now they're taking this very seriously, and organizationally it's reflecting it too. When we asked the question, how do you expect the digital changes to your industry to affect your value chains, your business models, your products and services? How will it impact your gross profit margins over the next couple of years? And it's interesting. What's interesting is that everybody is positive. Yeah? What's interesting is there isn't much fear here. So 59% expect our gross margin opportunity to increase moderately, and 25% expect our gross margin opportunity to increase substantially. Okay, so So at the moment there isn't, I think maybe perhaps this shows that CEOs are inherently optimistic people and that they look on this transformation as an opportunity. When asked about the extent to which they expect their industry to change in 5 years, the numbers are also conclusive. 41% expecting a very significant transition, 43% moderate, and 7% little, only 7% little, okay? All right, so what percentage of your customer perceived value of your products and services is digital now and will be in the future? So today, 30%, expected 2019, 46%. And as I said, we want to make the point that you take autonomous vehicles, you take the impact of autonomous vehicles on insurance industries or on the automotive industry as well. We aren't just going to be changing the way we sell these goods and vehicles, but we're going to be changing what's in them, how they operate. Think of the impact of fully autonomous vehicles on the insurance industry business. How will insurance companies sell insurance to autonomous vehicles? All right? The rating will not be based on the age or the sex or driving behavior of the driver, but rather on how confident we are that Chrysler or Daimler or Volvo can build autonomous vehicles. Maybe they won't be selling insurance in the event of car accidents, but they will be selling insurance to allow the driver to sue one of these companies if there's an incident, for example. But understanding that it's not just the channels now, but it's what we're going to sell which is changing. Okay, this is something that very important, I think, for most of you in this room, cybersecurity. So is cybersecurity really just a tech thing? So the question we asked was, do you believe that cybersecurity is the responsibility of who? Is it the responsibility of technology? And our advice to you as CIOs is to urgently reset this conversation. Reset the expectation that cybersecurity is a tech problem, right? It's a business issue. 50% approximately of respondents said that cybersecurity was the responsibility of the technology organization. However, when we also look at the spending on technology that happens in enterprises outside the IT department. Today, about 40% of enterprise IT spending is outside technology, okay, whether it's in marketing or different parts of the business. So if you have the case that 40% of the technology spend is outside the IT department, it is not responsible to expect the technology department to be responsible for cybersecurity. So as CIOs, we urge you to have this conversation and change that expectation. Okay, so some good news for CIOs as well. We looked at, we asked the CEO who they thought in their organizations was the natural partner for them to help them lead this digital business transformation change. And the results and our advice to you is that the CIO, so you need to take the pilot seat. This really is an opportunity for CIOs. The information shows, so when we asked CEOs to tell us the title of the person in their organization most responsible for digitalization, or who should be, the majority rated themselves. So that's interesting in itself. Okay? It shows the majority rated themselves. In second place is the CIO, all right? So this is a very clear message that CEOs see that the CIO has a crucial role to play in this. Again, I know there's lots of data on this slide, but you can see it in some detail afterwards. Okay, so I think I have a few minutes left. Just to say something about that were some findings from our most recent CEO survey. But we also do an annual CIO survey, which is the largest of its type in the industry. We had almost 3,000 CIOs last year, representing about 250 billion of IT spend. We surveyed 84 countries, and I think about 40% of our respondents were from EMEA, and across these sectors that you can see here. So I just want to share one or two of the responses from the perspective of the CIO. So when we ask CIOs what percentage of their revenue is in digital, now they're telling us 16%, but in 5 years, 37% is their expectation. In terms of public sector, we asked the same question in terms of processes, percentage of processes that are digital versus 5 years' time, and again, 42 to 77. One thing about CIOs, one thing when we asked them to select their top 3 digital impacts, the majority rated better operations, so better revenue through better operations, are also channel, so more business through digital channels. And this is fine, but what we want to say, the message we want to say is let's be more imaginative here. All right, this is really doing what we do now better, or doing it a bit more efficiently. But let's think a bit more about what are the more novel or innovative use cases. Looking at the budget, okay, when we ask what you're spending on, what your new 3 areas of IT spending will be on, the results, BI, data centers, and cloud ERP. So that idea of big data monetization, and that shift to the cloud. You can see the numbers there, and just to give you some ideas, you'll get the slides afterwards too. Okay, in terms of spending, EMEA, where we are, we're expecting a 1.5% increase in IT budgets in this year. What are the biggest issues to your success? 22% rated skills shortage, attracting and maintaining people. Start to think about what skills you have internally, what you can do about it. We would recommend that you treat talent management as a strategic priority. That literally you start to do things like partner with universities, hackathons, invite citizen developers, find ways to expand, identify your strategig partners. Try to treat your vendors, not just as vendors, but can you co-create with vendors as well. When looking at talent gaps, it's no surprising, it's generally around the information analytics space. I'm moving faster because I know I'm almost out of time. Okay, so what CIOs love and hate about their jobs? All right, so not surprisingly, we like the ability to impact business outcomes and be involved in change. Nobody likes the politics, workload, and what's interesting, workforce issues. Again, showing the problems with talent management. One suggestion, maybe you're doing this already, but think about, you have to find a better way to prioritize and to aggressively delegate work. One trend we're starting to see is this trend of CIOs in hiring what we call a COO of internal IT, of day-to-day IT. So delegating as much as possible of that as you can. Finally, what I encourage you to do is to think about this yourselves from the point of your digital courage, all right? So you yourselves as CIOs, as IT professionals, think about what you are prepared to do, how much risk you're prepared to take. Whether you're prepared to just look at digitalizing operations the whole way around to new digital business models. But decide yourself, and also be definite about this. Think about you, what your role is going to be. Are you going to take the lead in this, okay? All right, okay, so thank you very much for that, your time this morning. I think I'm almost out of time. We'll make the slides available. We have an event in Ljubljana on the 15th of June, and we have an analyst visiting, and he's going to talk about developing and creating a digital business strategy. More information is available here, and we'd be happy to see as many of you there as possible. I'll be here afterwards, and I'd look forward to talking to you. Thank you.